What's up, everybody? Welcome to Let's See If This Sucks. It is our game review series here at Remember the Game Industries, where I share some of my thoughts about a particular video game and let you know whether or not it in fact sucks. Today we're talking Twin Breaker, a Sacred Symbols adventure, which is a brick-breaking game developed by Lily Mo Games. It originally released on the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation Vita earlier this year, and last month it came to Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC. I played the Xbox One version, and I was provided with a free copy of the game for the purpose of this review. As I mentioned, Twin Breaker is a brick-breaking game. Arkanoid is probably the game most people think of when you bring up this genre, and a lot of you probably played Brick Breaker on your Blackberries back in the day as well. I've always enjoyed these types of games, and I was really excited to get my hands on Twin Breaker and see what kind of spins they'd put on that tried and true brick-breaking formula. The main campaign consists of 40 levels, and then there's a New Game Plus mode as well. The level variety and increasing challenge make the pair of playthroughs well worth your time, and while it's not the longest game you've ever played, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. In an era where games seem to be 40 plus hours just by default, this bad boy doesn't overstay its welcome. One of the trophies or achievements is to actually beat the game in 24 hours, and I like that it's a game you can knock off in a weekend. They also found a way to spice up the standard brick-breaking gameplay formula by giving you control of a pair of paddles instead of just sliding a single paddle across the screen. You move the left paddle with the left stick and the right with the right. They can't cross over, and it forces you to use both of them instead of just dumping one and trying to do it all with the other. This single mechanic is, in my opinion, both the game's biggest strength and its biggest weakness at the same time. I love the concept of it, and while it takes a little getting used to, I found it to be a lot more fun than I did frustrating. As long as there's only 2 paddles. Later in the game, some levels introduce 2 more paddles, giving you 4 to control at the same time. I really didn't care for this, not because it's too hard, and make no mistake, it is hard, but because you spent 24 levels adjusting to the 1 paddle per stick mechanic, and now suddenly it changes you up and makes you relearn the game. And then after a couple of 4 paddle levels, it goes back to 2, then it goes back to 4, and Most games rely on increasing difficulty. They introduce new mechanics gradually, and as you master one, a new one gets added. To add and take away a feature like this just left me irritated and dreading the 4 paddle levels. If they were insistent on adding this spin to the game, they should have just stacked all the 4 paddle levels near the end, so once I got used to that mechanic, I wouldn't have to readjust over and over. I also felt that the screen at times was just too cluttered. Every time you hit a brick, a large yellow number pops up telling you how many points it was worth. I don't think most players care that the 2 bricks they just hit got them 5 points each, but all those numbers combined with the large ball, the constant items, the scrolling backgrounds, make it really difficult to keep track of what's going on. In my opinion, for a brick-breaking game, less is more. I loved Brick Breaker on my Blackberry because it was clean and it was simple. Far too often I found myself losing track of the ball with Twin Breaker, and then I'd realize where it was but not have time to make the save. I don't mind that the game is hard. Like I mentioned, I finished the campaign and the New Game Plus campaign in a single weekend. But difficulty from clever design is one thing. Difficulty because of constantly shifting mechanics and a cluttered screen is like dying in a 3D platformer because you didn't know what you could and couldn't stand on. The game contains a story as well. I won't spoil it for you. The premise is actually pretty cool. It was also written by Colin Moriarty, the host of the internet's predominant PlayStation podcast Sacred Symbols, and formerly of IGN and Kinda Funny. And I gotta be honest, I'm a big fan of Colin. I've listened to his podcast for years, and I enjoy his writing, so I was really excited to see what he would do with the story in this game. But by the end of the game's opening segment, I found myself getting annoyed at just how much text there was. It gives you the option to skip it, and normally I would have, but as a fan of Colin, I wanted to ride it out and see where the story was going. Cutscenes continue to pop up between levels, and while there's certainly a well-written story in the game, it's just too much. A quick, basic, Bowser kidnapped the princess story is fine, but I don't need a short novel sprinkled into my brick-breaking game. Just let me break bricks. I will say though, the detail was there, and I'm very excited to see how the RPG that Colin is writing right now turns out. I also think the game could benefit from some online co-op where you each control one half of the screen, and I feel like it'd be perfect for leaderboards with high scores and time, etc., but those aren't included. That said, I don't think you can really complain about a lack of features when a game only costs you $10 US. The game also concludes a couple of spin-off and mini-game modes like Marathon and Hockey, and they're cool at a glance, but I didn't think they really had much replay value to them at all. So with all that in mind, we answered the $10 question, does this game suck? No, it doesn't. When the game keeps it basic and just lets you break bricks, it delivers as promised, and it's really a lot of fun. I enjoyed a majority of the game's 40 levels. I just felt like it got in its own way and it tried to do too much. The 4 paddle levels are more frustrating than fun, the screen gets way too cluttered at time, and that damn story could have been a third of the length that it was. But if you enjoy brick-breaking games, if you're a fan of Colin Moriarty and Sacred Symbols, or you like games with a reasonable achievement/trophy list, it's worth your time. And if you can check 2 or more of those boxes, then this game's a slam dunk. Again, Twin Breaker, a Sacred Symbols adventure, is available now on Xbox One, PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Thanks for watching my video. If you liked this, please do the whole subscribe thing and check out my retro gaming podcast, Remember the Game. You can find every episode wherever you get your podcasts or right here on good old YouTube. Cheers.